Hello, hello. Welcome back to Loki's Librarian. I am your librarian, Katrina. If you are new here, welcome. This is where I am reading through the enormous library of books you see behind me, and then I give you a quick synopsis and I tell you what I think about them. So if you like books and just aren't sure what to read next, hit that subscribe button, like and share my videos. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, this week's book joined my library back when it was released in July. Then because of Gulag Archipelago and Rise and Fall of the Third Reich in October, I just didn't get to reading it as quickly as I wanted to, which is a shame because this week's book, Trejo, My Life of Crime, Redemption, and Hollywood by Danny Trejo with Donal Logue, is really good. I mean, it's easily one of the best books I've read this year. Now, as you know, I started adding booze to my book reviews a few weeks ago, and I usually try to find a cocktail that's topical to the book at hand. However, Danny Trejo has been sober since 1968. He has literally spent the last 53 years of his life helping other people to get sober, and it was through trying to help someone who was struggling with sobriety that he got his first real movie break. So it seemed somehow disrespectful to mix a cocktail while discussing this book. So today I will be virtuously sipping my tea as we go through this.
What's in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD?
It's just tea.
Now, Danny Trejo was born on May 16, 1944 in Maywood, California to Dolores Rivera King and Dionisio Trejo. His mother was married to someone else who was fighting overseas in World War II. His father was a zoot suiter, and so kind of that's the groundwork of his family history for everything that follows. Now, his father, I don't know, 2 years after he was born, forced his mother out of the family home and eventually married Alice Mendia, and Alice was the mother who raised him from the time he was 3.5 years old. So he refers to, legally, she's his stepmother. He calls her his mother because that's who raised him. So, I mean, parent isn't always about biology. So his mother, Alice, raised him, and he did not have the best of relationships with his parents. His father was kind of cold and domineering, and his mother was too, to some degree. So the closest male relative that he had was his uncle Gilbert, who had just all the swagger and machismo that a young kid could want to emulate, and Trejo did. Unfortunately, Gilbert Trejo's swagger and machismo led him directly to a life of crime and drugs, and Danny Trejo followed right behind him, participating in drug deals by the age of 7 and his first arrest at the age of 10. It's really young. He first tried heroin when he was 12. I think he said he technically overdosed. His uncle brought him back, but that's just heartbreaking. Now, typically when someone starts that life that young, their life path, it seems like it's a done deal, right? It's predetermined at that point. You've already headed down that road, and that is what your life will be like. And when he started in the prison system, it kind of seemed like that's exactly what his life was going to be. He had listened to his uncle Gilbert when he was growing up, so he did everything Gilbert told him to do as far as walking the path to become basically the biggest swinging dick in whatever prison he found himself in. And so consequently, he was in and out of prison for the next 14 years of his life, including one stint in the early 60s, and this was interesting, where he was serving time concurrently with Charles Manson in the same prison. Pre-Tate LaBianca murders. I think those happened while Danny was in prison somewhere else, but if I'm remembering my timeline correctly. But that's a tangent, that's not relevant. But he did meet Manson in prison, so it's like, oh, okay. His come to Jesus moment, what changed his life, like literally the entire course of his life, it was headed right down this path where he's going to spend his entire life in prison, or, you know, dead young from an overdose or a robbery gone wrong or something, happened while he was in prison. He was in Soledad prison in 1968, serving 10 years for a drug and robbery charge, when a prison riot broke out on Cinco de Mayo. During the riot, Trejo and 2 of his friends ended up assaulting some guards, which typically back then was a capital, I don't know if it still is, but back then at least it was a capital charge in California. So here he is, 24 years old, already serving time for this armed robbery and drug dealing, and he realizes that he could literally be facing death row. His life might actually be over as of right now at 24 years old. So while he was in solitary confinement, he made a deal with God, basically said, I'll get sober and I'll help people, And, you know, as he says in the book multiple times, and this is excellent, if you're praying, why worry? If you're worried, why bother praying? And at some point, you just have to have faith. I cried a lot reading this book. It was so good. Blue eyeshadow might not have been as good because it kind of draws attention to the very greenness of my eyes. My eyes are hazel, but blue makes them look really green. Also makes the fact that they're now bloodshot from my eyes welling up really obvious. There was not enough evidence to say definitively that it was Trejo and his friends who committed the assault. So he was released from solitary confinement and immediately began delivering on his agreement with God. He got himself clean, and he started helping others in prison get clean. Because, yes, there are drugs in prison. All right, back then there were, and I'm quite sure that nothing has changed in the intervening 50 years. Drugs are still remarkably easy to get in prison. He was released in 1969. He only served half of his time, half of his 10-year sentence, and he never went back. At least not as an inmate. More on that later. When he returned home to Pacoima, California, he kept going with his promise to God. It's not, I mean, there's a lot of people who are like fair weather people and they'll think they got away with something. Not him. He took that as this is an agreement I made with God. I need to keep this going, which I think he got from his dad. He didn't have a whole lot of good to say about his dad. I think he has a great deal of empathy for his father, but he didn't have a lot of good to say about him. But one thing he did say is that not long after Trejo was born, his dad stabbed a man in a bar and then took the entire family and fled to Texas. A year later, Dionisio Trejo brought the whole family back to California and asked his mother to help him hire a lawyer and promised that he would never get in trouble again if she could help him get out of this scrape. She did, and he did. He never was in trouble legally again after that point, which that keeping of a vow, I think Trejo got that from his father. And that's just kind of the impression I get. He's been sober since 68, and that's kind of been the driving force of his life more than his act. He's known for his acting. Like, that's what he's known for. But what's kept him going is that drive to help people. So right out of prison, going to be doing a lot of editing on the crying this time. So right out of prison, he began working with organizations that help other people get sober. And not just AA and NA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. Those are important organizations. Plenty of that, but facilities where people can get clean, he'd go out and find people who are struggling and talk them into going in and getting clean. I feel like he met 3 of his 4 wives when he was in recovery. The first one he met just before going into prison for his last stint, and she divorced him while he was in prison. Definitely met the mothers of his children that way. And because he was dedicated to helping others, when he got a call one night from a kid who was on a movie set trying to stay clean, he answered. Right? And he said it was late at night, the phone rang, he didn't feel like it, but he remembered one of his sponsors basically saying, hey, you're there for them, helping other people is part of the process, so you've got to answer that call if the phone rings. So he answered the phone and went to the set. It was late at night, and while he's walking across the set, he runs into Eddie Bunker, who Trejo had done time with in San Quentin, and Eddie knew from their time there that Trejo was a boxer and got Trejo in front of the director to help the lead actor with a boxing scene coming up, and Trejo ended up being in the scene as well. And from there, he started getting casted a lot as prison inmate. I mean, he could play that role pretty convincingly, having done it himself. And for quite a few people, that's kind of what he's known as, is the big scary Mexican, the inmate. I mean, probably one of his more famous roles for, white people at least, is Johnny 23 from Con Air.
Usted es el famoso criminal, amigo.
Sí, me dicen el Juanillo 23.
Right? And thankfully for many, many more, he is also known as Machete.
Pick up that Mexican!
But his proudest role, as he says, was the role of George in the movie From a Son, which was directed by his own son, Gilbert. And basically, this whole book, his life is an open book during this whole book. I did find particularly informative and instructive, he wrote a chapter, like one of the more pivotal roles for him, I guess, that kind of helped push him in various directions. is there were two films that were coming out at about the same time in the early 80s. Early 80s, I'm sorry, late 80s, early 90s. And they were both on, filmed on site at various prisons in the state of California. One of them, which is the one he ended up acting in, was Blood In, Blood Out. The other one was American Me with Edward James Olmos. And he was actually offered parts in both of them, and he read the scripts for both, and he had serious concerns about the script for American Me, which he discussed with Edward James Olmos at the time. See, the mascara is waterproof, but the eyeshadow is not, so we'll see how this goes. I might just have blue streaks running down my face at the end of it all. And his reasoning was sound. I mean, he makes it very clear he has nothing but respect for Olmos, for his acting career, and for his contributions in helping Latina actors kind of step forward into leading roles. But it was basically a matter of the fictional story of American Me was taking an awful lot of liberties with the story that was purporting to tell about the real life of Mexican mafia. And apparently there was some filming problems because basically the cast and crew didn't take the correct steps to get the right approvals from the convicts. And so Blood In, Blood Out filmed a little bit easier than American Me. So that was kind of interesting. Things you didn't know. Like, I didn't know that they could or would film on site in a prison. So that was interesting. He was pretty funny when he was talking about in Blood In, Blood Out when they were filming on site and the guards were trying to give the actors vests to wear, and the actors are trying to be all tough and stuff. You know, I'm manly man, and the guards looked at Trejo and said, "Tell them why they need to wear this." He said, "You need to wear the vest so that if something goes bad, they know who not to shoot." Everybody wore the vest. I thought that's a hilarious anecdote because I can absolutely see that happening. Like, I could see that going down exactly as he described it. So from the point he started acting, every single acting job he was ever offered, he took. And, you know, he talks about how some actors, you know, are worried about the next role. Some actors won't take a job if they don't like the role. I mean, if you look him up in IMDb, it's reported that he's been in 427 acting gigs. And you could literally watch one thing he's been in every day, and it would take you over a year to watch it. For a variety of reasons. As he directly says, even his worst day acting is better than his best day in prison. Believable. Also, by agreeing to the job, he's helping other people to work. He's keeping the economy going. He's doing his part to make sure that other people are able to feed their families. And not said by him, but stated by co-author Donal Logue, kind of at the end of the book, with Logue's closing thoughts. Everywhere Trejo goes to work, he finds meetings, which is logical, right? I mean, if you're somebody who struggles with addiction, you want to keep that safety net around you because it'll help you to stay clean. But he doesn't just find meetings. Glad I wore the waterproof mascara. Okay, so he'll seek out troubled youth homes and he'll go talk to the kids. Well, I'm crying because y'all know I'm a complete pussy, right? Everything makes me cry. And there are so many people all over. I mean, Hollywood certainly comes to mind, but really just all over. Politicians, Hollywood, fucking social media. Well, they'll kind of talk down to people. They'll sit on their golden pedestals and tell everybody what we should be doing to make the world a better place. And he actually does it. And that's beautiful. He actually shows up. And he shows people there's a different way. It was not all smooth sailing. It's not like he woke up in solitary, promised to get sober, became an actor, and everything was golden. He had plenty of rough times in there. Like I said, he was married 4 times. He freely acknowledges that the marriages failed because of him stepping out. He was not a loyal, faithful husband, but he even knows why. I mean, he knows that has to do with the environment he was raised in, where all of the men in his life had one at home and one in the streets, and that was how he was raised and thought that was normal. It took having a daughter that taught him, no, Dad, that's not normal, and let me tell you why. And he learned from that. He learned from his kids, which is something that not all parents do. And so that was, like I said, I think he's remarkable. Of his 3 children, 2 also struggled with addiction, although they are both sober now. He had a bout with hepatitis C and liver cancer. At one point, he had like a double brain hemorrhage, had to go through physical therapy to relearn how to walk because the brain bleed was so severe. Although, amazingly enough, after the brain bleed happened, before he knew what was going on, he traveled to Europe and did some acting gigs, which I'm like, Jesus. I mean, he's tough. He's a tough guy. For all the problems he's had, he's maintained some good connections. I mean, when he won the Humanitarian of the Year award, one of his ex-wives presented him with the trophy, or with the award, I guess, an award, not a trophy. And the mother of his 2 youngest children is now his best friend, and he calls her the love of his life. I mean, this book was so good. As you can tell, I like cried my eyes out reading it, cried my eyes out reviewing it. Like, no amount of gushing is going to do this justice. It was just so powerful, so beautifully written. And I read it in like 2 days, and it kind of left me wondering what I could do to leave the world a better place. And man, I haven't done anything near as much as he has done to make a difference in all the best ways. Truly, this has been my favorite book this year. It's like reading through like a real, you know, you've heard of Joseph Campbell's Heroes arc, you know, go out and have adventure, learn a life lesson, come back. This is like reading through a real life Heroes arc. It's amazing. And I would recommend it to anybody. I mean, especially to somebody who's struggling with addiction, and because as much as I enjoyed it, it wasn't written for me. It was written for those still struggling to find a way out. And yes, I cried a lot while reading it. Cried a lot during this review, which I didn't want to. I was trying to rein it in, and I just... Anyways, that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, let me know what you think in the comments. Yes, you can laugh at me for crying a lot. I don't just cry over sad things, I cry over good things, and this was really good. So I'll see y'all next week. Bye.